very much for your warm welcome extended to me this morning and for kindly inviting me to participate in the excitement of this annual national convention. You know that I had second thoughts, of course, when I received your invitation because since I was diagnosed with cancer last June or 3 months ago, I have not been delivering any speeches at all. And although I'm now in full recovery, since these wonderful new discoveries by modern science have enabled me to kill at least 90% of my cancer cells. Something which I will do very soon, inflicting death on the cancerous cells of Philippine politics. Although I'm in the recovery stage, of course I'm still suffering from pains, aches, various aches and pains. For example, you saw me coming here with my fingers bandaged because they bleed as a result of the disease. And I had to take them off just before coming back to the microphone. Another obstacle was the traffic I had to navigate from where I live in Quezon City all the way here to Muntinlupa. You know that it's an entire epic journey to come from Quezon City, passing Makati. Kasi baka may madaanan kang pulis. O ngayon ang pulis, naghihingi siya, patayo siya ng bahay, hingi siya ng pera para mambayad sa bahay niya. Last, ang mga pulis pala ngayon, kunwari nagbibilad dyan sa initan o sa ulanan, pero may mga 5 hectare estate, kompleto, kontrolo swimming pool, naka-landscape pa. But then again, when I was going over the invitation, I remembered that PARAG is the oldest and the largest service organization in the country, composed of 61 member boards nationwide and with over 3,600 members. So I could not refuse, that is why I'm here. I am very serious about what I will have to say, but first I think I shall start on a light note. Ang unang bagay na gusto ko malaman sa inyo ay ito. Hindi ba nagbibenta kayo ng mga house? Oh, sino sa inyo nagbenta ng House of Representatives? Makakatikim sa akin ang suntok yun. A realtor, an architect, and a politician were having a debate about whose profession was the oldest. Sabi ng realtor, sa amin ang pinakamatandang profesyon. Ang sabi sa Bible, the Lord God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. Si God ang unang realtor. Sabi ng architect, mali ka. Naunang naging architect si God. He first created the universe out of darkness and chaos. Sabi naman ng politiko, mali kayo. Naunang politiko. Sa tingin ninyo, sino gumawa ng darkness and chaos? Minsan may mag-asawang minalas na nakabili ng haunted house. Lumapit, ganyan na Senado, talagang haunted. Papasok ka palang, tatayo ng buhok mo. Lumapit itong mag-asawang ito sa isang pari para magpa-blessing ang bahay upang mawala ang masamang espiritu. Nagpasalamat ang mag-asawa sa pari, pero dahil kakabili lang nila ng bahay, wala silang mabigay na donasyon sa pari. Sinabi ng pari sa mag-asawa, bayanan niyo ako sa sunod na linggo. Kung hindi, maririposes ang bahay ninyo. Nung Nung bata ako, umakyat ako sa bubong ng bahay namin. Hindi ako kinaya ng bubong namin, kaya nalaglag ako. Mula noon, nauso na ang term na hulog ng langit. The title of this speech is The Real Estate Transactions, and the Curious Case of the PNP Chief. May sisingit ko yan. The first part is about the complexity of real estate transactions. Real estate transactions in the Philippines are governed by a complex system of laws and regulations. Under the Philippine Constitution, there are key prohibitions on the ownership and disposition of lands. Outside the Constitution, the system that governs real estate transactions consists of scattered laws and regulations. In addition, at the local level, specific ordinances also regulate the ownership and disposition of real estate. Hence, legal complexity arises from the absence of a unified system of laws and regulations, making real estate transactions difficult. Let me outline the typical real estate transaction structure. As brokers, you have to exhibit due diligence in dealing with the following. The registered owners, iba-ibang personalidad dyan. Kamukha ko, tawag ako ng tawag sa classified ads. Tapos, tawad naman ako ng tawad. Kaya hindi natutuloy. You also have to deal with liens and what lawyers call liens and encumbrances attached to real property. You have to deal with other legal requirements for transfer of land, documenting the transaction, and dealing with taxes and other expenses. As a lawyer, I can see that one of your onerous problems is the corruption affecting title registration in our country. To register any real estate transaction, the broker has to pay a bribe on pain of denial or delay in the issuance of title. Hence, I call on the Land Registration Authority to exercise stricter scrutiny over the provincial offices of the Registry of Deeds. I am motivated by the concern that those registers of deed can be bribed to issue fake certificates indicating title or ownership. Pero ngayon meron tayong isang opisyal sa gobyerno. Ang problema niya, hindi niya makuha ang patunay na siyang may-ari kung hindi patunay na hindi siya may-ari. Mas mahirap yun. Further, registers of deeds should be required to adopt higher standards of scrutiny to avoid issuance of titles by the submission of fake documents by bogus claimants. Today, real estate transactions are governed by RA number 9646, also known as the Real Estate Service Act or RESA Law of 2009. The Supreme Court only recently, upheld the constitutionality of the RESA law in the 2014 case of Reman Enterprises versus Professional Regulatory Board of Real Estate Service. The Supreme Court paid tribute to residential brokers by stating, quote, that real estate developers at present constitute a sector that hires or employs the largest number of brokers, salespersons, appraisers, and consultants due to the sheer number of products they advertise and sell nationwide. Korte Suprema yan ha, papuri niya sa real estate brokers. However, after the RESA Law of 2009, the need for amendments is growing acute. I humbly suggest that PAREM should draft a bill amending the RESA Law dealing with the following concerns. Bullet. The law provides for the creation of what it calls the Accredited and Integrated Professional Organization. I understand that it now exists as the Philippine Institute of Real Estate Service, or PhilRes. Let me raise a warning point. The accreditation of PhilRes will expire in November this year, next month. One of the main problems that militate against the effectivity of PhilRes is the vagueness about who are its members. Under the RESA, the members include, quote, all real estate service associations, unquote. By contrast, under the implementing rules and regulations, the members are, quote, natural persons, unquote. The law should make a clear choice of who the members are. Next bullet. Under the law, a broker is limited to a maximum of 20 salespersons, despite the fact that the number of brokers is continually increasing. This indicates that there might be a need to raise the ceiling of 20 salespersons to perhaps 25 or 30 accredited salespersons. Bullet. Previously, the Department of Trade and Industry required an applicant for real estate salesperson to be only a high school graduate. Today, the requirement has been raised to, quote, at least 2 years of college, unquote. Salesperson yan, ha? We're not talking about licensed broker. Why do we require mere salespersons to finish at least 2 years of college? The Constitution does not require any years of college at all from candidates for national office, including the President, Vice President, and Senators. With the present K-12 program in education, high school education should suffice. Bullet. As a previous trial judge, I strongly advocate an amendment so that the RESA law and its penal provisions will impose not only the minimum but also the maximum penalty. That's a glaring deficiency in the law. It imposes only what is the minimum but not what is the maximum. Ay di pwede palang patayin silang lahat since there is no maximum. Bullet. PARAB should adopt the Real Estate Professionals Bill of Rights, which has been adopted in the United States. It provides for a government office that will govern real estate activity and ensure an essential degree of accountability over information published, referring to people who publish proprietary listing data owned by real estate brokers and agents. It shall apply to all online and print media that publish listing information, including desktop and mobile appliances. Pag-aari ninyo yung listahan ninyo yan eh. You have a right to keep it private to yourself. And no one has any authority unless you give them the permission to use your listing. Kaya dapat meron kayong Professionals Bill of Rights para hindi nakawan and walang malpractices connected with being salespersons of a broker. In particular, I advocate an amendment that will require online classified ads. I hope that we can pay more attention to online classified ads because they are the choice of advertising of the future, as already required by the RESA law, to be posted on the licensed broker's place of business. But today, I propose an amendment that it should also be posted not only in the place of business, but also on the online address. For online selling, the following should be included: the complete name of the licensed broker, his or her certificate of registration, professional ID card, professional tax receipt number, and the date of issuance and the duration of the validity of the documents he signs or uses or issues in connection with the practice of his profession. If PARAB can adopt my humble proposals and submit to me a draft bill proposing amendments to the RESA Law of 2009, I shall be happy to file it in the Senate immediately. But even before that, I have already filed Senate Bill number 2428, also known as an act to provide additional protection to buyers in real estate on installment payments. My bill includes the following provisions. Bullet. Require the subdivision owner to secure an individual title for every lot before offering it for sale. Bullet. Prohibit any mortgage, lien, or encumbrance of the title. Bullet. Make it mandatory to make the annotation of the title of the contract to sell or sale. Importante yung annotation na iyon. Kung may gusto pala yung nagbibenta niyan ng mga restrictions, halimbawa, you have to be a member of the housing association o kung ano man, kailangan nakalagay yan sa contract of title. Kasi bandang huli, maglilitigate lang sila, mag-asunto lang sila. Bullet, make it compulsory that upon completion of installment payments, the owner shall execute a deed of absolute sale and deliver the title to the buyer and give the commission to the broker. I challenge Parent to draft a bill providing that online publishers must first acquire accreditation from the Parent, adhering to the following rights. 1. The right to listing attribution and a direct link to the listing owner's website. 2. The right to bar brokers and agents from advertising on a listing that they do not own. 3. The right to comprehensive reporting with audit capabilities. 4. The right to prohibit unauthorized use of listing data. 5. The right to ensure that the publisher implements anti-screen mechanisms. 6. The right to unbiased and comprehensive data display of all listings. 7. The right to accuracy. 8. The right to prohibit automated property valuations. 9. The right to ensure that ratings, titles, and superlative designations are based on accreditation and objective criteria. And 10. The right to be free from questionable sales practices. Now I come to the part of the speech that I like better. The curious case of the PNP chief. The present PNP chief is facing an entire avalanche of plundered corruption cases. Hindi lang isa, hindi lang dalawa. Marami sila, isang listahan sila talaga. Including the following bullet. Plunder over his alleged involvement in a license delivery deal worth some 100 million pesos. Ngayong panahon, wala na tayong pinag-uusapan ng mga maliliit na mga halaga. Milyon-milyon na. Multi-billions, trillions. It is said that PNP entered into a contract with a bogus company which had not yet registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. That is the charge. Bullet. Allegedly accepted money donations to build an official residence inside a military camp. Ano yan? That is called, in English, that is called being caught with red-handed. Dahil hindi niya, she does not deny it. Inaamin niya. Sabi niya, pinaayos ko, pinaganda ko yung aking tirahan sa loob ng kampo militar. Pagkatapos, binigyan ako ng pera ng sino-sino mga tao para mabawi ko yung ginastos doon sa bahay na yon. That is a direct confession and admission to the crime of bribery. Ang lakas ng loob niya. Kung wala lang baril yan eh. Pero mo, sabihan ng taong bayan ganon? There are certain clerks and secretaries who get charged in the ombudsman for accepting 50 pesos, 100, 500 pesos. Bullet. Allegedly bought an SUV, sports utility vehicle, worth some 3 million pesos in the market, but paid only some 1.5 million. Kanya binili, gusto kong bumili ng akin. Bullet. Allegedly engaged in a so-called trucking business and poultry farm and claiming that both are worth 90 million. Ang mga pulis ngayon at iba pang opisyal, mahilig na pala ngayon sa farming. Wala na dapat gobyerno, kung hindi farming na lang, farming industry na lang ang Pilipinas, dahil lahat na halos ng public officials natin ang lalaki ng mga farms nila so-called. Bullet. Alleged use of a bulletproof Land Cruiser vehicle that is not registered in his name. Bullet. Owning in San Leonardo, Nueva Ecija, an estate of some 5 hectares containing a 2-story house with separate guest house and separate gazebo, not to mention a swimming pool in the middle of landscape gardens, and arguing heatedly that the premises cost only 3.75 million. O, bilang broker, sa tingin ba ninyo? Nakakabilib ba yan? At saka, what is the purpose of, in that Far North address. What is the purpose of building a swimming pool? That is so far away, and he's supposed to be holding office every day here in Metro Manila. Why does he have the tucked away swimming pool na yan? Tapos naka-landscape pa. He's in farm area or an agricultural area, and his premises are landscape. Kawawa naman yung mga tanim doon, disiplina niya. Mr. Purisima has no defense except that his alleged political enemies are allegedly exaggerating his unexplained wealth. Parang ang sagot niya, sobra naman yan. Exaggerated or not, the question is, where did he source all that wealth? Saan nagaling yan? Bakit nagsumma cum laude ba siya sa UP? Wala man lang siyang honors or distinction sa Philippine Military Academy. Yung PMA na yan, dapat mahiya yan. Just like UP, dapat mahiya sa mga graduates nila na nababalita, na napakalaking magnanakaw ng pera ng gobyerno. I have to be impressed with the defense made by Mr. Purisima. I have never before met someone who seems to have such a small mind and such a big head. I watched him fleetingly on TV while he tried to brazen off his defense against what appeared to be the facts. As a trial judge, I was trained to study what the law calls, quote, the demeanor of the witness, unquote. That was my main function, pag-aralan mo mukha ng testigo. At kung ano man ang paghatol mo, hindi na dapat palitan pa ng Court of Appeals or Supreme Court. Because ikaw mismo nakakita eh. So part of our training was how to distinguish the liar. But now I can no longer practice that particular skill because I'm afraid in the Senate and in the Congress, I'm surrounded by liars. Judging from his demeanor during the Senate hearing, I have to wonder whether a respondent works that hard to be a jerk or whether it just comes naturally. Today, after the televised hearing, people say he's the perfect jerk. I tell them that he's not perfect, but he's doing all right. What should he do about Mr. Purisima? Despite all of these allegations that are sufficient to knock a person off his feet, he just refuses to go on leave of absence. Dati konting suspicion lang, hiyang-hiya na tayo. Ngayon walang hiyaan na. Republic na mga walang hiya na ito. Pinagmamalaki pa nila. He refuses to go on leave of absence, thus igniting suspicions that he will use all the powers and prerogatives of a PNP chief to silence his critics. That is the purpose of suspension when charges are filed. It's not that you are found guilty immediately, but it is to prevent you from using your authority and your powers to intimidate witnesses against you. Eh ngayon ayaw niya mag-leave of absence. Hindi naman siya pwede preventively suspend by you know who. Nasa ngayon ay nagliliwal you. Doon yata sa Indonesia. He can be placed on preventive suspension, but only after the Ombudsman conducts a preliminary investigation and files a complaint for plunder against him with the Sandigan Bayan. I have a humble suggestion. President Aquino should appoint Purisima as a member of the National Police Commission or as Assistant Secretary of either the DILG or the DND or to some other position which is what is called by the law incompatible with his present office as PNP chief. That is the best way under the circumstances to get rid of a suspicious character. Ayaw niya eh, naninigas siya doon eh. Kaganon siya. Sabi niya ganyan, dakdak na kanong dakdak dyan, basta hindi ako alis dito. Meron pa akong kagawin. Meron pa siya ibang mga bahay. Let me cite a classic authority on the subject of incompatible office, Floyd Metchem, author of the classic book, A Treatise on the Law of Public Officers and Officers. According to Metchem, any person who, while occupying one office, accepts another incompatible with the first, ipso facto, meaning to say automatically, absolutely vacates the first office and his title is thereby terminated without any other act or proceeding. The rule means that another office is incompatible when the nature and duties of the two offices are such as to render it improper from considerations of public policy for one person to retain both offices. For example, two incompatible offices are, at one point I was a trial judge. I could not be a trial judge and a clerk of court at the same time. Or, I cannot be both the claimant and the auditor. I cannot be both the landlord and the tenant. Kaya bigyan mo na lang, ayaw niyang mag-leave of absence, bigyan mo ng incompatible office yan. In other words, President Aquino, please keep Purisima upstairs so that we leave the PNP alone. Kung ayaw niyang tanggalin, ay bigyan niya ng incompatible office. Nag-umpisa na rin lang ako dyan, patuloy na ako ngayon. An epidemic of elephantiasis. Yung sakit ng may elepante, di ba may elepante? Kapal-kapal ng mga mukha. What we are seeing is an epidemic of people in high government office who possess the epidermis of pachyderms. Epidermis means skin, pachyderm means elephant. Who possess the skins of elephants. Ganun ka kapal. Those guys are thick-skinned. It used to be said in ancient Rome that Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. Suspicion pa lang, galit na si Caesar sa iyo, baka papatay ka pa eh. Dahil sabi niya, Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. But today, the criminals in high public office consider themselves to be above suspicion, even when testimonial and documentary evidence is presented. And they have no defense but to cry that the charge is allegedly, quote, politically motivated, unquote. I have news for them. Anything that happens in politics is politically motivated. So it is no defense at all. Political man o hindi, ginawa mo ba o hindi? Yun ang pagtatanong dyan. This epidemic of scandals began with a plundered charges against 3 senators, including ex-Senate President, na pumunti ko ng sinutok sa Senado. Grabing tao yan, o. Magnanakaw na, inggitero pa. Inggit yata dahil naging ROTC core sponsor ako. In that case, let us investigate his gender. The epidemic continued with the airing of documented dirty linen against the incumbent vice president and his family. Nag-hearing ang Senado. Totoo ba itong mga pagbibintang nito ng former vice mayor ng Makati laban sa dati niyang mayor at dating kasama niya sa politika? Tama ba ito? Totoo ba ito? Ay may dala siya ng kanyang mga videos, which are accepted evidence. Meron siyang mga documents. So he complies with the requirements of the rules of evidence. Ngayon ang sabi lang ng Vice President, hindi ako pupunta dahil walang katotohanan na sinasabi niya. Ganon ba ang attitude ng tao na nasiraan? Pag siniraan ka ng tao, hindi ba gusto mo suntukin mo na kaagad? Susugurin mo na? At saka, ibibigkas mo na sa buong daigdig kung ano talaga ang katotohanan? Bakit ayaw lumabas yan doon? Anong rason niya? Dahil hindi naman siya kailangan matakot na bastusin siya at nasa mismong Constitution natin, the Constitution provides that persons who are called to testify in congressional hearings have rights which have to be respected by the legislators. The epidemic continues further with present allegations of profligate abuses by no less than the person who heads the agency, which enjoys a monopoly of sanctioned legal force against the civilian population. Mabigat ang maging PNP chief or defense chief dahil sa ating sistema, hindi ka pwedeng magkaroon ng firearm or to use it unless you fall under certain circumstances described by law. Eh, ang PNP at ang DND, pareho sila may parang license to hold firearms and to discharge those firearms if necessary. Kaya napakahirap at napakapanganib pagkakaharap natin ay ang chief ng PNP. All of his highly publicized officers charged by or with the Ombudsman should bear in mind the fate of the prominent and powerful Chinese Communist Party official called Bo Xilai. He was king of the headlines for some 20 months. Ang dami niyang pagyayabang dahil marami raw siyang serbisyo para sa Communist Party, untouchable daw siya. Then he was convicted and handed a life sentence by Chinese court for bribery, embezzlement, and abuse of power. Just like Bo, tingnan nyo ngayon ang nangyayari, kamukha lang kay Bo Xilai. Just like Bo, the accused public officers in today's epidemic of scandals are very arrogant in their defense. Ang yayabang pa! Denying all charges. Wala daw silang ginawang masama. And blaming the corruption on other people in their own inner circles. Grabe naman. Nagsisinungaling, nagtataidol pa. In all of these, and probably in the forthcoming cases, the 5 centavo lawyers, yun bang pwede mong bayaran ng 50, pwede na. The 5 centavo lawyers will claim that their clients enjoy the presumption of innocence. Yun ngayon ang bukag bibig nitong mga na-charge. I am presumed innocent. Really? I repeat, ignorance can be cured, but stupid is forever. Yun ang sagot ko. When I read the asinine remarks of these cheap lawyers, I'm fully confident that they possess unparalleled mediocrity. Kaya ako nakaka-answer tuloy. Narinig, my client enjoys the presumption of innocence. Intindihan ba nila what is the meaning of presumption of innocence? Ibig mo sabihin, we have to stop our mind from working until after the final verdict for years and years? Ganon ba yun? Ano pinagsasabi nito mga abogado ito? Let me emphasize that the most basic defense, even in the charge of the most egregious corruption, is the presumption of innocence. This legal phrase means simply that the burden of proof is on the prosecutor. That's all that it means. You are not required to presume a person innocent until the very day that judgment is promulgated against him. It is a judgment of conviction. What are they saying? That you will suspend our rights to make up our own minds? Na ganyan ang mga ebidensyang pinapalabas? Ganito yon. There is a basic distinction in criminal law between a presumption of law on the one hand and a presumption of fact on the other hand. A presumption of law can be rebutted by the facts. So the presumption of innocence is not being rebutted almost every single day by all forms of media, including social media. At meron silang mga hawak, may litrato sila, may mga quotation sila from eyewitnesses, and all other forms of evidence under the rules. And a presumption of fact is different from presumption of law. A presumption of law can be rebutted by the facts. Presumption lang yan eh. Hindi naman ibig sabihin, may batas na hindi tayo pwedeng maniwala na masama laban sa kanya, maski lahat ng ebidensya ay pinalabas na. A presumption of fact can be rebutted by another, stronger fact. So, kung mukhang may sala itong tao, may buong karapatan siya na magbigay din ng kanyang sariling ebidensya, anuman ang forma ng ebidensya niya. Video, radio tape, camera, still or video, documents, particularly those official in nature, testimonies by eyewitnesses. Lahat ng yan. Pag may ebidensyang pinalabas, ganito yan. Pag official ka, may presumption of innocence. Pag may ebidensya na pinalabas, the presumption of evidence, the presumption of innocence is now overcome by the evidence. Kaya, ikaw magbigay ka naman ng ebidensya mo para ngayon, pantay sa harap ng publiko. Eh, kung sagot mo, ayaw kong sagutin yan. Oh, what conclusion do you expect the public to make? Gusto mong public official, then you subject yourself to all the trials and tribulations of being a public officer. Because a public official should not be thin-skinned. With the facts as reported by the media, even accounting for inaccuracies that are not based on malice but on the nature of the news cycle. Maaaring makamali ang media, pero karamihan hindi yan makamali dahil sa mali siya, kung hindi, nagmamadali lang sila palagi. The persons accused have lost the presumption of innocence. I will not presume those guys innocent if they appear before me in court. Na-expose na ako sa media eh. Ang binantay ko na lang, anong sakot mo na factual and evidentiary in nature instead of name-calling? We are no longer dealing with the burden of proof, but with the burden of evidence. Yan ang gusto kong ituro sa mga abogadong ito. Tumigil na nga sila. Dahil exposure to stupidity makes me sicker of cancer. We are no longer dealing with the burden of proof, but with the burden of evidence. May dalawa yan eh. Burden of proof means the accused is presumed innocent, and that is why it is the duty of the prosecutor to first present his evidence. In the sequence of trial, it is the prosecutor who presents evidence first, and then it becomes a turn of the defense to present defense evidence. And from all these two sides, the judge then makes up an educated mind. Pero ang burden of proof, as I said, means only that the burden of evidence falls on the prosecutor. Siya kailangan mauna. Eh, naninira ka eh, paglabas ka ng ebidensya mo. That is the burden of evidence. Ngayon, may tao ito, presumed innocent. May ebidensya ito, nakakasira. Kaya, dahil may ebidensya na siya, ito naman kailangan may ebidensya din. That is the so-called burden of evidence. Presumption of innocence is simply sa umpisa yun. Pero pagkatapos niyan, then naging burden of evidence yan, palit-palit yan between the prosecutor and the accused. While the trial progresses, after the presentation of facts by the prosecutor, the burden of evidence now shifts to the defense. After the defense presents its case, the burden of evidence again shifts to the prosecutor. Thus, the burden of evidence shifts between prosecutor and accused in the course of the trial. Palit-palit yan eh. Kung sa ebidensyang pinipresenta nila kasi hindi lang naman direct presentation of evidence yan eh. Meron pa yung rebuttal, meron pa yung sur-rebuttal and so on. Sigun lang, sa kung nangailangan ng pera ang abogado mo, haba ng haba ang gusto niya. Tsaka ang dami palabras ng abogado pag nag-pista. Dahil nanonood ka bilang kliyente niya. Paano siya sisingil? Hindi siya mag-arte ng kanyan. Yan dahilan kung bakit. Napaka-complicated ng mga cases na ito. The lawyers are trying to earn their lawyers' fees. Kamukha rin yung brokers, di ba? Pag napakita ka ng property, sari-saring papura yung ginagawa mo. The burden of evidence shifts between prosecutor and accused in the course of the trial. In the light of the presumptions of fact raised by media accounts of the charges constituting plunder and corruption, the burden of evidence is on the accused. They should stop exhibiting the epidermis of pachyderms and the intestinal fortitude of man-eating anacondas. Ang anaconda ahas. It is doubly complicated to fight corruption when the accused pretend to be champions of honesty. Pakinggan mo lang, kung salita lang, ang base ng ating mundo. Ang dami nilang papuri sa sarili nila. They pretend to be champions of honesty and then resort not only to shameless propaganda carried out by unprincipled media, so-called PR or press relations practitioners, mga sindikato, but also to all forms of unethical character assassination carried out by expensive and unconscionable media syndicates. Nakita ninyo ang hirap ng public official? Gusto pa ba ninyo ng public official? O gusto ba ninyo maging kasing yaman ng mga public officials? Na nahalata na. Mamili kayo. Gusto niyo mahirap na buhay? Gusto niyo itong maliwaliw na buhay? It's your choice. We're in a democracy. Kaya lang, kung mamili ka ng illegal, baka mamaya ay ma-life sentence ka kasi wala ng death penalty. Biro mo yan eh. Sabi ng testigo, binigyan ko siya ng pera, itong petsa, tapos sabi ng Anti-Money Laundering Council, tama ka, dahil nga nag-deposit nga siya dito sa petsang ito, pareho. They coincide. Coincidence is not a rule of law. Kaya dyan malang kita, ha? I'm referring to the headlines today. Maswerte lang kayo at may sakit ako. Kung hindi, I will discuss it also. So these are the trials of a fledgling democratic society. But the Filipino people have no choice. We have to keep on fighting. We have to remain adamant in the belief that good will triumph over evil and that good government will triumph over corruption. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the Parade, I remind you from this point, in the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free, while God is marching on. Thank you very much.